So today the plan is to get some work done on our cases. We were up to Jimmy's, got them decked. We've done all that sort of stuff to them, and we've line lapped them. But now it's time for some of the dirty work. And today we're going to try to finish those up and get them ready so we can start assembling the motor. So stick with us while we lap the cases. Then we wash them, clean them, do what we got to do, bead blast them, clean them again, get them painted, and get them ready to assemble for this jet black motor. So let's go and get at it. One of the last things we got to do is we just want to check these surfaces to make sure that they're nice and square and even, no rock in them or anything, right? So these mating surfaces have turned out perfect. And I'm laying on the square of the cutout part, the surface where we surface decked it. And we've checked it here with this, and we've checked it with the level as well to see where we're sitting at, and we're right in the bubble, right where we're supposed to be. However, when we check this one on this surface, we're in the bubble right where we're supposed to be, but we're low here. So we found out they got about a 24 thou feeler gauge in underneath it. So we're going to work on it a bit here and get these level. We know that this one is the correct one and it's proper. It's right in line with the bubble. That's right where it's supposed to be. So this is the one that's a problem here. So we'll work on this one and we'll get these perfectly leveled before we get it ready to paint. So now that we've got these cases filed down, it wasn't a lot, but we did it by hand, and our ruler sits flat all across the whole thing. And just to ensure that these are even with the case, because the case on the center line of the section of the case is sitting square. So if we put our level on there, we're perfectly square, even sitting in a position like that. So we can move ahead with these and decide what we're going to do. The breather hole there has a few little marks in it, but there's no gouges, no rings, no nothing. And I could bore it out to the bigger size, 30 thou over, but at this time it appears to be pretty good, so I don't see anything detrimental to it. We're soon time to clean up these cases and get them ready. We've been touching it just here with a light 400 grit, just enough to take the marks out a little bit, as you can see. So we'll do the same with the rear, and then we'll be good to go. You can see marks in it, but you can barely feel them. Now we've got the cases all cleaned off, just light marks out of it with just some 400 grit, just to lightly go over it and just take any kind of marks that were in and out, so that it'll seal well. Now that we've got our cases decked and everything's ready to go, there's one last operation that we need to do for our own sake to make us feel a little better, and that's to lap the two halves of the cases together, just to make sure that we have a good seal. Now the cases are sealed with a high-tech sealant, and it'll usually cover everything up. But being as everything's apart and all we've gone through, we're going to take the time and show you how to lap these case halves together. Being as they're two halves, you never know how irregular the surface is. So we'll take you through it and see if we can get these things nice and smooth and fitting well to each other. So we've got our two case halves ready and we've unbolted them. We've just put a rod down through the center of our welding table here and bolted this case solid so that it won't move at all as we proceed with the lapping. So we're just going to give this a little mix. It's a Permatex lapping compound, and it works really well. I use it for all my valves and everything else. So just to make sure that it's nice and fresh, we'll give her a quick stir and then we'll spread it on the case and start with the procedure. And start spreading it around the case. Once again, when this procedure is finished, we have to wash this case out a few times, making sure that we get all the lapping compound out. And there, that should be enough to get us going. I'd say we're about good. Now, I've had a little light spot just on the outside of these, and the edges of them might be out a little bit. We've certainly got a good seal all around, but we've doused her up there, and we're gonna try one more time. And that should do it. So we'll clean it off and have a look. Now you can see that our surface is sort of a satin gray all around. And that means that we're lapped in place. And the same with this. It's a nice satin finish all the way around. So we know that we're lapped and the cases are fitting as good as they can. If there's any kind of lip left around the edge or anything, which there doesn't appear to be, a little tiny shiny spot there, the sealing compound that we put in it, the case sealer, will certainly seal that up. But now we know the two cases are flush and they're fitting together really nice. So we just need to clean them, we'll wash them all out, make sure we get all this grit and shit out of them, and then we can go ahead and get the cases ready to paint, and then we can work on our assembly. So I'm pleased with the way this turned out. This nice satin finish all the way around. That's what we're looking for. And these cases have been decked now, so there's no reason why they shouldn't be perfectly usable to use. So I'm looking forward to getting ready to put the motor together. So we'll clean these, wash them all out, get them ready for paint, put a coat of paint on them, and then we'll start assembling this pitch black motor. Keeping an eye on me, making sure I'm getting it. Well, I've been sort of procrastinating as to what to do with these cases. Sometimes stuff is necessary, sometimes it isn't. Now, I've sanded these cases with sandpaper and gotten them really smooth. But there are places in the bottom where it's flaking off a little bit. So rather than take a chance, I think what we're going to do is bead blast, glass bead these cases, and get them clean before we paint them, just to be sure. For any of you that have glass beaded before, you know that that can be a problem with your threads and such. So what we're going to do is go along here and we're going to put bolts in to all our threaded portions. And this will help keep the glass bead from going down in the threads, especially down to the bottom of the hole. You might think you've got them out of there, you know, and then you get your cases up, you're working on them and such, and the glass bead moves all over in there. So I found that the best way to do it is just take a little bit of time and put some bolts in the threaded holes. It doesn't stop all of it, but it stops it from collecting in the bottom of the holes. Another place is these little small holes. I think these are like a 1024 or something. They're quite small, and they hold the stator on. And they can easily get glass bead in them, easily. So for the few minutes it takes, I'm just going to put screws in them, and that'll help eliminate some of the problems. I'm going to go along and be fairly careful as I glass bead it, so I can try to stay away from certain areas and things. It's just that one more step to go. All right. There's also two little tiny holes in here, right in that area there, and that's where your stator plug goes through the hole here. and that helps to hold the wires down to keep them off the stator. They are tiny and are not necessarily through holes. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But I'm just going to take the old reliable just a little bit of duct tape just to cover them up, and like I said, I'll stay away from that area, but a little bit of duct tape will do it for our purposes, for what we have to blast. There we go. And I'm not going to be blasting right down inside here, so we're just going to put some across here. We're going to cover up the oiling hole. When glass bead gets everywhere, it can get jammed up in the threads pretty easy, and trying to force a bolt in there and you don't know what's going on, it's not worth the trouble. Alright, so now we have all our holes plugged. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I can blow up and make sure it's clear and everything else. Alright, so that case half is ready to go. These two holes here on the lifter blocks, should plug those ones because they're blind holes. They don't go through. The other ones we can blow out straight through. Yeah, I might as well put 2 of these little ones. Save some of it from piling up in there. Plug that little oiling hole gallery. And I'm going to put a little piece down in there. All these areas will be blown out afterwards and shot through with some brake clean or some sort of fluid, and then of course they'll be washed out in hot water. So these little things you do early can save you a lot of work later. Once again, I use the little cans and I keep them full of all these nuts and bolts. It says case bolts right on the top, so when I'm doing a set of heads or cases or whatever it is, instead of having to root around and find screws, I've generally got a pretty good set of them in there. So now we've got them pretty well ready to go over and blast, so we're going to get our glass beater set up and get ready to clean these cases off, and I hope that it goes fairly easy. Fingers crossed. Maybe I'll just sprinkle a little pixie dust on them and they'll be all that much better. Before we get at it, I've gone around the shop and covered everything up, anything that seems to be open. We do get some sort of dust out of the bead. I'm not going to fool you. So I find it just good to cover everything all up. The last thing we're going to do is spray some brake clean through all of our little holes. Just in case there's any chance that we'll make sure that those are all clean like that. And then we're going to go wash them out, and then we'll blow them all out, and these cases will be ready to paint. So now my cases are ready to go. I gotta mask them all up, decide just how I'm gonna put them to paint them. I think I'll lay them flat. It makes a couple difficult spots, hard to get in underneath some of it. But we'll touch those up first, and they're in the front of the motor. You don't see much there in the back. But they look good. They look good. They cleaned up nice, and I'm quite happy with those. So now that the cases are all bead blasted, I'm glad I took the time to do it. It probably would have held the other way, but you know, something eats on my mind the whole time, and if I leave it alone, it's just going to eat on my mind more and more and more. So we're going to mask them up in the next day or so, get them painted, and then we can start assembling. We have a lot of the parts ready, which is nice, so we don't have to stop and do each thing. This was probably the worst job that we had to do, but I'm glad they're done. So now that our cases are all bead blasted and good to go, I'm going to have to start getting at masking them up. So we're going to do that first. I was going to put the studs in first, but I think I'll mask them up, and I'll put the studs in when I have it on the stand and the case is bolted down tightly to the stand and they can't move around. It'll be easy to mask the tops up, so I think that's the direction we'll take. In any case, I'm glad to have them done at this time. So we're certainly moving along, and we have a lot of other stuff ready to go. So this project should move along fairly quickly, I hope. So stick with us and see how it goes. It's my time, remember? Let's go. I think at this point I'm going to put my cam bearing in, because it's about at an easiest point as we'll get. I could put it in when it's up on the stand and stuff, but then I'm sort of banging on it sideways. These bearings, of course, have a numbered side and a round side. So the numbered side goes up. The numbered side is the side that you will be beating on. We've got a little driver that fits down inside the bearing. And we'll eyeball it up straight here. Just start with an easy tap. There is a shoulder on the back side, so we don't want to go through the shoulder by any means under there. I think I've got a little bit more. There we go. And there's a cutout here in that little area right there, which oil goes down through. So you want to make sure that your bearing is down past that there. And as soon as it passes that, that's close enough, because we're up against the inner side of the shoulder right here. That takes care of that. So now that our cases are painted, I'm getting pretty stoked about this project. We've already got our cylinders done and our heads done ahead of time. And they've been sitting for a while and the paint's been hardening up. I've been putting them on top of the oven there to let them bake a bit. My lifter blocks, my oil pump, my oil filter holder, housing holder, whatever you call it, those are all painted. So now we're getting down to assembly, and that's always the fun part when everything's clean. So stick with us as we get this Jet Black Evo motor together and get it on my engine stand and get this puppy running. Keep following us along, and don't forget to subscribe, like, ring the bell, and tell others about our site. We'll see you on the next one.